Are Mercedes trying to block Christian Horner from re-entering F1?
The new regs haven't fixed Ferrari's ability to ruin a strategy. Yeah, but who doesn't love Mario Kart?
No, sure, but I'm not sure I'd put it, side by side with the top class of motorsport in the world.
I love this sport. It's so good.
Hello and welcome back to Manual Override, the show in which we deploy our opinions on all the latest rumours, gossip and news from the paddock of our favourite sport, Formula One. I'm Will.
And I am Tom.
And we have just had the first race weekend of 2026. Tom, how did you find the Australian Grand Prix weekend?
Early. It was a very early morning.
Oh, yeah.
But, do you know what? We went into it really nervous about these new regs and how many cars are going to make it to the end of the race. And it actually turned out to be quite exciting. We got, six overtakes for the lead inside the first 9 laps. I mean, granted, the new regs haven't fixed Ferrari's ability to ruin a strategy. But, it was much more exciting than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting. It's one of those things where I think qualifying, which we should talk about as well, as we haven't, was maybe a new low for my time watching Formula One. So I came into the race with quite low expectations. So to watch the kind of yo-yoing that was happening at the start with Charles Leclerc and George Russell felt quite exciting. But it's also one of those things that, the longer I've sat with it since the race, the less well it's aged.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, it's a really nebulous thing, because a lot of the criticism that's coming at the new regulations is around what is Formula One and what is being a racing driver and what does that mean? And I do feel some of that sense of that's not racing that I've come to know. What's happening is you're using your battery advantage to get an overtake, but the problem is, I can't remember, one of the drivers put it in these terms, it might have been Ollie Behrman, that you kind of lose 2/3 more power than you gain using it, which is why they're able to immediately re-overtake you, and you get this kind of yo-yoing effect, which was exciting because, as you say, there haven't been many overtakes in Australia in the past. And if you looked at their official F1 social channels afterwards, they were quick to broadcast that everywhere.
Yeah.
Number of overtakes, wow, this is amazing. But then as the race went on, and yes, Ferrari made a classic strategy error, you did just sort of get the sense the fun and games have finished. Now Mercedes, who have the best battery management, just sort of naturally move towards the front and that they just win. And I feel like that might be the story of every race this season.
I think a lot of people have been saying that. And, we've got one race worth of data and it's kind of drawn the conclusion that everyone was expecting. And if you look at it in isolation, yes, there is reason for concern that Mercedes, if they've got the best battery management, so they'll just sort of run off and win. But if we look at the fact that off the line, Ferrari had easily the best start for both cars. Mercedes had a big issue on the starting line in terms of having no battery deployment, which ruined the start of their race. If you look further back in the field, the at least in qualifying, the McLarens and the Ferraris and the Red Bull, if they don't hit the wall, were actually up there with the Mercedes in terms of jostling for the front 2 rows of the grid. Granted, Mercedes then went and got a lockout, but I might be one of the few that actually looks at this at the moment and thinks it could be quite exciting. That you look at Max, he came through the field quite convincingly. If he hadn't have hit the wall during qualifying and he'd started up in P4, P5, P6 up near Hadjar, what difference would that have made in the race? Could the Red Bulls have held Kimi Antonelli back a bit more? Would that affected the way that Mercedes had used their pit stops. There's lots of things in F1 that are, if this had happened, if that had happened. And I think if one or two things had been slightly different, the conversations would be slightly more 50-50 in terms of how these regulations are performing. Do I think they're perfect? No, absolutely not. But do I think they're as bad as everyone is saying? I'm not too sure.
I think the thing is, I think a lot of the criticism is coming down from the fact, well, partly it's what we saw in qualifying and the sheer amount that these drivers are braking, in some cases even downshifting on the straights because they need to harvest energy, and going really slowly through the corners just so that they can deploy full battery down the straights. It becomes this sort of straight line speed contest, and what kind of signifies the faster teams is just how much power they are able to harvest over a lap, which means how much speed they're able to put through the straights. So whilst before, like historically, F1 is about when do you brake? Like what's the, late braking into the corners, being aggressive, what line do you take? And it feels like kind of none of that's there. More than one of the drivers have compared it to Mario Kart. This weekend.
Yeah, but who doesn't love Mario Kart?
No, sure, but I'm not sure I'd put it, side by side with the top class of motorsport in the world.
I think we've been very used to F1 for a long time being, ground effect, grip, cars on rails. How fast can you go? Who's the most confident driver on their brakes? How late can they brake? Who can get on the throttle the fastest out of a corner? That style of racing, and I don't think the sport should be confined to one style of racing, just because that's the way we've done it for a while. When you look back at the sport, it's always been about innovation. When it first started, there was no aerodynamics. It was all just who was just basically who had the biggest bollocks, and like who could wrangle a car around a track and not care if they lived or died. That's what Formula One started as. And granted, there's been changes that have meant driver safety and all that sort of stuff. So it's not about that anymore. It's who can figure out a vehicle and the way it works the best and the quickest. And I think we're just in a new era. And do you know what? I kind of like that they were braking earlier and downshifting, and some cars were then, picking up more pace on the straights, because then some cars were slightly more confident in the corners. Someone like Arvid Lindblad was overtaking people that in places that never would have been overtaking spots in Australia before. So I think there's a lot of give and take with these new regs, and people don't like change, and I think it's not necessarily, at least from my opinion, it's not necessarily people not liking the new regs because they don't like the new regs. I think it's people not liking them because they don't want Formula One to change. And I think this is just a period of alteration. I mean, it has to change slightly because there are issues, but I don't think it's as bad as people think. Like that was the most exciting first half of a race we've had for a very long time, and for most of last year, it was we start the race, we have lap 1, lap 2 drama, and we wait till the first pit stop because what's going to happen, and then we wait till the end of the race because the pit stops happened. That's what a lot of the races used to be.
It's a marked shift from the end of the ground effect era, which was increasingly becoming the sort of dirty air era, right? But I'm glad you feel so positive about it. I'm not quite sure where I sit with it yet. I think, like you say, it's only been one race and we need some more data. I'm a bit worried about that very long straight in China, but we will see.
It's very odd that
yeah.
I'm the positive one out of the two of us, but let's go with it.
Yeah, I think, I've been listening a lot to all of the drivers complaining, apart from notably George Russell for some reason.
I wonder why. It's the best car he's ever driven.
But I suppose this gives us a nice segue to our first big news story of the day,
Indeed.
which is the FIA going to change the Formula One regulations already?
It seems like it's certainly on the cards.
So, after all of the drama of the Australian Grand Prix at the weekend, it sounds like the FIA are ready to admit that they haven't got things quite right, and they're looking at making some changes. Now, these changes can't be massive by the nature of, the engines were already built, the cars are already designed. The plan to have these regulations set for 5 years, so there's only so much you could do mid-season when there's only been one race.
Well, it's not really mid-season, is it?
No, it's a little bit embarrassing.
That's like me being
like
31 saying I'm mid-40s, like mid-30s. Like it's not. Like...
Very late 20s, I
yes.
put it personally. But yeah. So there's two options they're looking at in particular for literally in time for Japan, so the third race of the season. One, and I think the most likely thing they're going to do, is look at if they can change the thresholds with the so-called super clipping. Also, don't love the name.
No, I love the name. I love the fact that
you like super clipping?
I love the fact that Crofty, every chance he got, was like, "You can hear the super clipping." So...
Do you get the sense that Crofty doesn't quite understand the rules yet either?
Oh no, he doesn't at all. The entire time he was like, "And what do you think about this, Martin?"
Well, if this team just deploys better than the other one, then yeah. Okay. But to be fair to them, I think they just haven't been given the data they need to learn.
No, I think
the
the very intermittent infographics that came up during the race were as much for the commentators as they were for the viewers.
Yeah, I was so glad they did come up because we really needed to see the battery levels.
Yes.
I don't know why it took so long. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. So, yes, they are going to potentially change the super clipping levels so that some of the teams, Mercedes aside, are able to harvest a bit better. And that way have more competing battery levels, because Australia is a particularly bad track for it, but it did seem like a lot of the teams were struggling with recovering their battery throughout the race, which is why it was not a very close race. The other, I'm just going to have to check again now. The other possibility, yes, right. There's another option, which is to decrease the level of deployment, essentially, like decrease the maximum energy deployment level, which would lower the horsepower across the field. You can see this one being popular. Everyone will be a bit slower, but that might be better for everyone in terms of competitiveness. And there's
let's chuck them all on bicycles then. Right.
There's a third option, which is they're looking into if there might be ways in which they can increase the power of the internal combustion engine. But again, like, these engines are already made.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I'm no mechanical engineer, but that seems challenging.
Well, maybe they'll figure something out. Maybe, they just want to be seen to be making noises that, we're going to work on it.
Well, I mean, there are much smarter people than I who will try and figure out how to make the cars better and more competitive and make the sport a more level playing field so that we get more exciting racing, because that's what everyone wants fundamentally, and that's what brings money to Formula One is making it as an exciting sport as possible. I just think I think I have a more positive outlook on the basis of these regulations than other people maybe do.
Yeah, well, maybe with a few tweaks that will put some minds at ease for the rest of the year. It's certainly clear that the teams across the board don't want any kind of sudden changes now. Like they need some time to let this bed in and work stuff out.
I mean, yeah, of course, yeah. Like we've had a number of years where everyone's been fairly confident in how their cars work, and we've had one race where people are like, okay, we might have some more data, which I'm pretty sure is why Alonso miraculously resurrected himself 10 laps behind, and they probably just sent him out for data harvesting, really, more than anything else. Like they're still figuring
It's really
out.
Interesting that Aston Martin seemed to do better than everyone expected and still put in like their worst performance in years.
I'm not surprised. I was surprised when he decided to sort of come back from the dead, but
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
even the commentators were like, Alonso's back on the track. Like,
yeah. Speaking of surprises from that race, I think all of Mercedes customer teams are a bit perplexed at the pace that is coming out of the Mercedes engine in the Mercedes car specifically. There's not a lot to say around this story, but I think it is an emerging one and one we'll come back to. Certainly heard stuff from Andrea Stella and from James Vowles that they were surprised at the pace. They're sort of stopping short of accusing Mercedes of withholding information or something like that from the teams. But there is certainly a murmuring of discontent among the customer teams, particularly Williams. So we'll see where that story goes.
Okay. I mean, there must be something in the. Again, I've not read too much into this level of the rules and the regs, but with customer supply parts, surely they must have to be to the same performance rating as the company that's supplying them.
They do, and they are the same engines. I think they get the same spec quite late in the day. I think this is more around how they're using the engine and the kind of information vacuum and maybe the software side of things. There's, I think, some question marks. But like I say, it's only kind of murmurings at the moment. So we'll see how that story develops. It is interesting for what we essentially assumed was going to be an internal combustion engine, an engine championship, and which, from Mercedes' performance seems to be the case, that the other Mercedes engine teams aren't occupying the kind of following spots in the grid after Mercedes. So something's
because even McLaren they had nothing in the race.
I do wonder if Oscar had been in the race, if he would have been more competitive. Lando had quite a bad weekend, like across the board. I think he missed one of the free practice sessions and it felt like his weekend was just kind of off kilter since then. So Oscar, on the other hand, was putting in better laps and looking stronger. If he hadn't had his unfortunate mishap, the Australian curse, then maybe he'd have performed better.
Well,
so
I think you can look at
an idea in China.
You can look at Lando as a mirroring of Kimi if you're looking at the Mercedes engines and people who had fairly complex weekends in terms of running time and testing time. Kimi had a pretty awful build-up to the weekend and still managed to get that car onto the front row and finish on the podium.
Yeah.
Lando couldn't. So then, I mean...
No, yeah. I think those are two different cars, aren't they?
Yes, they are, yes.
Yeah, Kimi, I mean, if you saw the pictures of Kimi's car after that crash, which they then turned around to, they hadn't set up the car. The guy was driving all over the place, still puts it comfortably in P2. I think that car is not going to be challenged anytime soon. I think the gaps might close. I hope they do. It's like slightly depressing. I know it's a new regulation and I know these things change, but slightly depressing seeing the timing tower shift the decimal point one place to the left.
Oh yeah, that did bug me.
Well, it's because the gaps aren't as close as they used to be, right? No, it was just really clear to me how last year we were talking hundredths of a second in difference, so you needed that extra decimal point. Whilst this year, they're seconds apart, like multiple seconds, or even, I can't even remember how far down it went. It was something like P8 or 9, I want to say, where people were lapped, and then it was like plus 2 laps, plus 3 laps. Alonso's 12 or whatever we can ignore, but like it is, and this always happens at the start of every regulation, but it is fascinating how big a spread there is now when we were so used to the whole grid being within a second or just over a second apart.
Yeah, I think there are hurdles and issues to get over, but I think if you look at the bits of the race that were fun and exciting and engaging, it was the fact that for the first time in a long time, we focused on the leaders of the race for the majority of the opening 10, 15 laps. Up until really the pit stop. In previous years, it was, here's lap 1 and lap 2. Cool, let's forget about the leaders and focus on some midfield drivers, and we'll come back to them at the pit stop. Whereas this was, the entire thing was, we didn't really see any midfield cars until after the first set of pit stops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was so much action between the leaders at the start that we didn't even really get a proper replay of the start. Which reminds me of, we're going to come on to a story about Alpine in a second, but thinking of Alpine, I don't know if you saw the clips. It wasn't on the broadcast, it was only shared on social media clips after
this is Colapinto.
Franco Colapinto's start. Avoiding Liam Lawson. Like, the reflexes of, I don't know, something superhuman. I have no idea how he managed.
I don't know either, but it was like when you watched his POV of him having a massively, ridiculously close approaching Liam Lawson and avoiding it.
Yeah.
It was really cool. But when you watched the front on view and you saw Liam Lawson's car and Colapinto coming from behind, to see, I don't know who it was to the right of Colapinto, but the fact that he managed to weave his car between those two cars and not crash was insane.
Big credit to Colapinto. But on that note, Tom, I've heard a rumour.
Have you, Will?
Yes, that Toto Wolff, I think on behalf of Mercedes, he is after all the CEO, is he? I don't know. He does own a big part of the Mercedes racing team, is putting in a bid to buy 24% of Alpine, which coincidentally is the same 24% that Christian Horner is rumoured to be bidding for. So are Mercedes trying to block Christian Horner from re-entering F1?
I mean, I wouldn't surprise me, and I love this sport. It's so good.
Yeah. It's been met with some interest from the community, questions of, isn't there a conflict of interest from the people that seem to be unaware that Red Bull have 2 teams?
Yeah. They've got no leg to stand on there.
No. So that could be very interesting. I don't know what any of it might mean for Flavio Briatore. We'll find out.
I
mean, I've pretty much put it on record, my opinions of the man. So
I think we both have. I think if Flavio is staying, I think his style of management would suit Christian Horner better. Take that however way you will.
Butting heads with Toto.
But I think if Toto and Mercedes become, shareholders and owners of that team, it would then incite a fairly big cultural shift within it.
Obviously, 24% is it's a large single shareholding, but it's obviously not a controlling amount. It would be quite interesting to see how that relationship developed if it was Toto, on behalf of Mercedes, owning it. I don't know whether we'd see something like a Racing Bulls style kind of development ground for future Mercedes drivers there, or if it would be something. It would probably lock Alpine into having the Mercedes engine, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll have a problem with that based on the performance of the engine so far.
Yeah, although not for them. Interesting.
Not for anyone other than Mercedes,
so
but
far. Yeah.
At the moment, yeah.
maybe they'd get some of the secrets.
Well, but whilst you have heard a rumour about Toto and Horner and Alpine, I have also heard a rumour
Oh, yeah.
that two younger drivers within the F1 world were heard discussing the rumours of two races potentially not going ahead this year might be more than just a rumour.
Yes, I've also heard this. Would you perchance be talking about Isaac Hadjar and Kimi Antonelli?
I am, yes, I am.
So I think what happened was they shared a plane.
They did.
Or yes, it was something like that, and they were overheard. I think Hadjar made a comment to Antonelli, something like, "Well, that's 2 less races that you guys can win."
Yes, and whilst he's not wrong, it is. I think 2 races for anyone that's not aware, the 2 races that are potentially not going ahead are, of course, it's Bahrain and
Saudi.
So I was trying to remember the order. So yeah, it's Bahrain and Saudi. For obvious sort of issues in that region at the moment, and there are far greater issues than 2 F1 races may or may not go ahead within that area. So, but within our little world of F1, it's big news. Within the world itself,
worth saying, I suppose, also that, you know, as much as this is a show about rumours, that this hasn't been confirmed, but hearing it discussed this casually from the mouths of a couple of the younger drivers seems to lean some weight on the idea that, you know, it's looking like those 2 races aren't going to go ahead. I would say the current geopolitical situation makes that seem pretty likely as well.
Yeah.
You know, weighing up the risks. Would you put that on? What I don't know, and no one knows, is how long the situation in the Middle East is going to continue. We're a long way off from this now, but later in the year, should those 2 races not go ahead, I guess we're going to get questions about Qatar and Abu Dhabi.
Indeed. Well. And I think, you know, if you look at the 2 races that are very likely to not go ahead based on the current situation and what we've been hearing, whilst as a fan it's disappointing to lose races because we love to watch the races, it does raise some interesting questions in terms of those 2 races significantly advantage certain cars.
They do. There's also another significant question, which is that, and this is big speculation at this point, but what else are we here for? I can't remember the calendar off the top of my head, but my gut feeling says that should those second 2 races get cancelled, then the season finale becomes Las Vegas.
Indeed it does.
Which is interesting.
It's interesting, and I couldn't
another big
imagine,
long straight. Another big long straight.
The F1 drivers wanting to finish the season in any place other than Vegas.
Well, yeah, I think F1 wouldn't mind it either. The thing is, Abu Dhabi pays them a lot of money.
It does. But I don't think any amount of money is worth the risk, personally.
No. So, I'm trying to remember what our other story was. Well, okay. I suppose just before we get into our predictions, we've got China coming up next weekend. It's already race week again. We will, I guess, find some time to do another little video like we did last week with some predictions for this race. But one little rumour I have heard is that it's got different names. The Macarena wing, or the barbecue wing. We saw Ferrari testing, which seems to swivel nearly 300 degrees and then back round, has apparently been shipped to China. Whether this means they are just going to run it in free practice and test again. There is only one free practice session, so that would be a bit risky because it's a sprint weekend.
It's a sprint weekend, yes.
or they're gonna try the wing. Be really interesting to see how that does.
Either way, if it's in the free practice session or if they actually use it, I'm just excited to see it. I think that's such a cool little piece of innovation. I
It
really
is
quite
really
like
interesting, isn't it? Shall we talk about how well we guessed the outcome of the Australian Grand Prix, Tom?
I mean, we can talk about it. Did I predict Charles Leclerc to win the race? Yes. Am I surprised that Ferrari managed to choose a questionable strategy and George Russell ultimately won the race? Not at all.
Still made
But
the
for
wrong
a
prediction,
brief moment at the beginning opening laps, I thought, do you know what?
I know.
I may have been a genius. And no.
I was like, Ferrari are winning it all. It's happening. I was suddenly questioning my life choices and being like, oh damn, should I become a Ferrari fan?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And then the first VSC happened, and I was like, okay, it might have been
Why
too
pit the
early for their
cars?
strategy, but
Why
maybe.
pit
And then
them?
the second
Why
VSC
bother?
happened, and they decided to skip it for one lap, and then they let everyone else in, and then closed it.
Yeah. Well, Bottas helpfully parked his car in front of the entrance of it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't blame Bottas
I-
because I love Bottas, so I'm never going to blame the man.
I think it's hard to say. I sort of think that even if they had played a good strategy, even instead of doing Ferrari things, that they wouldn't have had the pace to win.
No.
But
But I think to
Yes.
to go over it. So before the race, I predicted Charles Leclerc to get pole and for Charles Leclerc to win.
and
That may
I
have been some wishful
predicted
thinking.
for Oscar Piastri to get pole.
Yep.
And for Charles Leclerc to win.
And how wrong we
that right?
were.
Yeah. Charles Leclerc was on the podium. So
He was, and he was in first for a period of the race. So
think
I
that's
feel like
the-
I take
yeah.
a moral victory for backing him the entire way.
I don't know what came over us, particularly me, last weekend, when I suddenly decided that actually the Mercedes hype was all lies and this was another
Yeah.
McLaren dominant year, but Ferrari were going to be quicker.
But
out
it was
the gates
especially as
before.
we'd done previously to that, we'd done our entire predictions for the season. We'd gone on about the fact that Mercedes were going to be totally dominant and George Russell was going to win the championship. And then we both went, so what's your race prediction? Not mention George Russell. It's Charles Leclerc.
Yeah. It was an interesting one. We also predicted best of the rest, which I was feeling pretty bullish about.
You were, and I think rightly so in the end.
Up to the very end, actually, until the race finished, because classic F1 TV commentary, the first 3 or 4 crossed the line, and we're cut away to the families and the celebrations and all of this stuff. And I'm there going, excellent call on Arvid Lindblad, best of the rest. In his debut as well, amazing work. Feeling pretty chuffed that at least I got one thing right. Sent a message to Tom like, I think I'm doing one of the predictions. He said, no, it's Liam Lawson. I said,
Yep.
no, it's not. No, Liam Lawson's just behind him. Like, did you not see? Like and you were like, no, at the last second it swapped. And I looked back and it did. And they didn't show it on the broadcast. But Liam Lawson just pipped him to the, yeah.
I mean, that was for qualifying,
So-
wasn't it? Yes.
No, that was, you mean, well, yeah, Arvid Lindblad was ahead in qualifying.
Yes.
No, in the race, Lawson finished. But so, yeah, I mean, if we want to move the goalposts a bit, then I'll take it. But really impressive weekend from Arvid Lindblad, it must be said.
Absolutely.
Really confident driver. Like, he just went out there and blasted it round.
Yeah, and I think
impressive.
if you watch any of his sort of post race interviews when people were talking about his, the build up to the race and his mental state for all of the build up, I think for someone so young, he has a really solid head. Like
He's just got lots of excitement and enthusiasm. I watched some of his interviews and he just seems so happy to be there. Like, that's the
He
main-
is, but he's also very calm and he understands his fortuitousness to be there, but he understands that he needs to, whilst he's earned his place to be there, he needs to earn his place to stay there. And it was actually really quite nice to hear him be honest about that rather than try and hide it like most rookies do.
Yeah, I think there's lots of exciting performances to come from him, and I think he's a great talent. I did have a couple of things to be pretty chuffed about, despite getting all the predictions wrong. The first one we should talk about is the Cadillac Cup, which, Tom and I each have a driver we prefer. This weekend saw Checo absolutely ruthlessly dominate Bottas. Bottas was left in a pretty sorry state even before his car conked out.
Just drive the knife in even further for you there, buddy.
He must be pretty embarrassed to be driving alongside Checo at this point. Was it 7/10 ahead that Checo qualified?
What I think happened there was Cadillac had said to Bottas, "Look, mate, just give Checo one race.
Okay.
There's an Australian curse. You're an honorary Australian. We need to make sure that the curse stays alive. So just don't do as well in qualifying. Make sure the car has an issue. Stop in the pit lane just to screw with Ferrari a little bit. And then you can do the rest of the season as you wish." And I think my boy Bottas still will see the better of Checo at the end of the season. I hope.
Well, it's 1-0 so far, so we'll see. I will say there are the conspiracy theorists out there wondering if Bottas is still working for Toto with stopping in front of the pit lane and costing Ferrari like that. The other thing I have to be pretty chuffed about is our fantasy league, and I'm going to take the wins on this while I can because I know it won't last because it never does. I'm winning. I'm winning the fantasy league at the moment. I'm ahead of everyone. That's what winning means.
That is the dictionary definition of winning, is being ahead of everyone. Yes, Will.
Super chuffed.
I am ahead of...
chose Arvid Lim... go on.
I'm ahead of one person.
That's like a new record for you, maybe?
Yeah. I didn't lose money in the first race, which is also a record for me.
I doubled Ollie Berman, obviously, and that came in clutch because I was watching qualifying and I was like, oh no. Because obviously, confidently, I thought Haas were going to be best of the rest. And so watching Audi and Racing Bulls come in ahead during quali, I was like, oh, this is a mistake. But Ollie Berman put in a hell of a stint.
He did.
Got a great result and more money and points for me. So, yeah, feeling pretty good about it. I only lose Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon for the next race. So not a huge amount of choice to make next time, but I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Well, it's the thing. So I boldly went for the tactical option of signing every racer or every driver and my constructor for the full 5 races.
That is a bold decision.
I thought I know what I'm doing. I'm going to stick to my guns early doors and go for 5 race contracts for everyone. Mainly because I hadn't got enough money to buy anyone else if I didn't do that.
I think that's a pretty ballsy move at the start of like the first race of the season in a new regulation set when we don't know anything to go, no, I'm committing to these guys for 5 races.
Yes, I've gone for it.
George Russell's the only 5 racer I've got, although I am planning on getting Charles Leclerc, I think. But we'll talk about that later in the week.
Yeah. Like I say, if you want to join our F1 Fantasy League, there's
maybe we should
a link
set up
somewhere.
like a manual override one, and then that would be easier to share around. I don't know. But
we can figure something out.
We will figure something out and let you know.
We're doing a lot of that right now.
But yeah, and thanks for bearing with us while we do. So, but for all the prediction failures, I was pretty chuffed about those 2 things. So I will take the wins where I can. But I think that's all I have. I don't know if you have anything else, Tom.
No, I'm just happy that F1's back. I was excited by the race. I'm excited that it's already another race week. I'm excited to see the sprint when people have only one practice session to figure out, a track with these new regs, where to do. I just think this weekend's going to be pandemonium, and I can't wait.
I do think the sprint could be quite interesting if it's anything like the start of the last race. I am a bit worried about that straight in China, but we can talk about that when we talk about our predictions for the Chinese Grand Prix.
Indeed.
Which I will talk to you about then. It's been good to chat, and we'll see you all guys next time.
We'll see you next time. If you want to like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff, click the relevant buttons. You know what you're doing.
You know it helps. And we'll see you next time, guys.
See you next time. Bye.